This episode is proudly supported by Westholme Australian Wagyu. Whether you're a chef or just love going to restaurants, you know the best ingredients are everything, especially when it comes to beef. Westholme, based in Queensland and the Northern Territory, Australia, is working with the land to create nature-led Australian Wagyu. They steward 16 million acres of rangeland, guided by the natural ecosystem where cattle graze and forage on native grasses for the first few years of their lives. The result is high-quality Wagyu beef that reflects the terroir of Northern Australia. Westholme believe that when nature leads, flavour follows. Learn more at westholme.com.
Welcome back to another episode of Dirty Glass. I'm Shanteh Wale and I'm here with the amazing Dani Valent to talk all things wine, food and the joys of dining. Hi Dani, how are you?
Shanteh, always so good to catch up with you. I am very well. How are you?
I'm good. Life's ticking along. We're already into the middle of winter. I'm looking forward to some Olympics ready to get going. And it's nice to be here and chat to you. Always a highlight of my week.
One of the things that I wanted to talk to you about today was the recent review of Quay, somewhere that you know very well. It was reviewed by Callan Boys in the Sydney Morning Herald, and he gave it 19 out of 20. Amazing.
So fantastic. When I saw that, my heart just sang. I mean, it's always going to be a massive part of me. But you just never know. Nobody's counting their chickens, and certainly none of the people at Quay would be expecting such a high review like that. So I just got off the phone with Troy Cristante not long ago when it came out, and you could just feel the joyous happiness, the relief, everything. And he said it's just given the team such a massive boost and they were so thrilled.
I mean, how long was it that you were at Quay?
It was about 11 and a bit years in total.
That is a bit of a stint. So you would have seen those reviewing cycles come and go. Like, what is the feeling for a top restaurant, when you know it's reviewing season, or when you know there's a reviewer in the room, or hopefully that you're surprised that a reviewer has visited?
Oh, you are always surprised, to be honest. You never know. And as soon as somebody steps in the room, it's like lightning. It goes through it like this ripple effect as it kind of cascades down a tree, like there's a whisper and then next minute everyone in the kitchen knows, and you kind of feel almost like everybody's buttholes tighten a little bit, I think. People start walking differently. Everybody's a little bit like, whoop, heads up, let's go. But the Quay team has got a really amazing core of people and a lot of people that have been there for a long time. There has been some major changes of late, but I think it's a real testament to the fact that great places attract really good talent and they stay there for a long time. And a lot of the people there know the place really, really well. And so, but it's still nerve-wracking when somebody comes in. And I was talking to Troy about that. I said, Quay has done so well for so long. Peter is amazing, but you always have in the back of your mind, are we changing enough? Are we at the forefront of service? Are we reinventing the wheel enough? Or are we resting on our laurels and just doing what works for us? I think that there's always a question in your mind, how long can we keep doing so well for?
That's so interesting, because I feel like you're playing to different audiences with what you've just talked about, the change and the consistency, because I feel like so many customers would come to Quay because of everything they've heard and they sort of want to have the experience that they've heard other people rave about, whereas reviewers indeed will be looking for that change, for that constant striving, for things not being as they were on last visit. It's a tricky balance.
Yeah, it certainly is. And I think when I really thought about why Quay has done well for so long, let alone the fact that Peter is just the most beautiful human and everyone wants to do the right thing by him and just, live up to his standards. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that every table is scrutinized like any other. And even Troy said to me, he's like, yeah, I couldn't, give a rat's ass if they're drinking DRC Romani Conti at $6,000 a bottle or a glass of Sauvignon Blanc. To me, they need the same care, and that's how everyone feels. And so there's never a table that slips by the wayside. There's not a lot of engagement. Perhaps they've come in for a mocktail or a soft drink, and they don't have a lot of engagement. We're still giving them the same amount of effort. And that's why it can be so exhausting, I think, because you are constantly saying, have I done enough? Have I done enough? What more can I do? And you're asking yourself that for every single table.
Yeah, so interesting. I really enjoyed the way that Cal wrote about some of the wine matches in his review, and I might just read out a couple of pars. So he wrote, smoked oxtail, slow cooked in oxtail broth, fortified with chestnut puree, black garlic and truffle, both fresh and emulsified. Head sommelier Stephen Petersmar pairs it with a Parker Estate 2017 Terra Rossa Cabernet Sauvignon that's all tomato leaf, oregano and blood. Opt for the 8-course menu, and it's $200 for the standard wine matching or $250 for the sommelier's choice with more left field selections. A 2023 Ashton Hills Piccadilly Valley Chardonnay brings out the richness of smoked eel cream, lacing young walnuts, sea cucumber crackling, and Murray cod roe, while a 2021 Venon and Fils Chablis enhances the dish's savoury elements. How does that sit with you?
I love it because there's some kind of classic odes to some of Australia's oldest, most established wine regions. And there's some of the kind of more modern emerging wine regions like the Adelaide Hills Chardonnay, which is on there as well. And then we've got something really classic like a beautiful Chablis. I would say, and this is a question for you too, Dani, about the one thing I always felt didn't get enough airplay when it came to kind of wine and food is perhaps the attention to detail with food and wine matching. And I think it is, it's not for everybody, and I totally support if someone wants to have a big Cabernet Sauvignon with their oysters and that's what they love, absolutely get on board. But I think that really excellent food and wine matching, it is really hard to do. And so I kind of always wished perhaps in the wine lists of the year and things like that, when they do a food and wine pairing, that they actually come in and have the food wine pairing and really went to town on it, because I think Quay puts such a huge effort into making sure that everything tastes. It's never just a grab that, we'll put that with that because that might work. It is always, you open multiple bottles, you're tasting it with the food. It's so complex, as we know, with Pete's food. So I would always like to hear a little bit more from the reviewers on really if it worked or if it didn't, and the whys and wherefores.
Yeah, I think that's such a fair thing to want. And I feel like often in restaurant reviews, it is the food dominates, whereas I feel the front of house experience and the drinks, the way that the drinks are threaded through the meal are absolutely crucial to the way someone feels about it, how much they enjoy it, what they take away from it. I mean, perhaps a new favourite wine or a producer or, as you say, a region that you might explore more. And, yeah, definitely appreciating the care and artistry and huge storehouse of knowledge that comes to play when SOMs match drinks to food. I think there's definitely more room to highlight that.
And do you tend to also evaluate kind of how a wine pairing's delivered? Because I think that there is a huge difference between saying, here's your 2017 Ashton Hills Chardonnay that's going with your Cacio Pepe because it's, a classic match, as opposed to someone who's really talking to you and has assessed how you're enjoying and what you want out of your kind of food and wine pairing experience. Do you think about that?
I definitely do. And I think so much of the skill in being a sommelier is, as you say, reading that person and seeing, do they want to know which, side of the hill the grape was grown, or do they just want to know, that they're going to enjoy it. It's such a skill. And I suppose also reading someone as their level of engagement shifts during the evening would be such a part of it as well. Like perhaps you're open to hearing more early on, or perhaps later on you're more relaxed and you feel like you can open yourself to knowledge. So yes, it definitely makes a difference.
Oh, that's good to hear, because I think, yeah, it's definitely a consideration. That same game that we always played, who are they, what are they here for, but the how, which was really important to me that I'd ask sommeliers, how are you going to tailor your service to suit what they're after? How are you going to make it individual for them and unique for them because you've picked up on something they've said, and it might just be, I'm going to explain wine in a completely different fashion than I would normally. I'm not going to talk about anything scientific. I'm only going to talk about the shape of the wine and describe it in colours because they really responded to that. If that's the way to go, then cool.
And what about if you feel like, let's say you take the sommelier's choice where, as Callan said, more left field selection. So I want to say, are they a little bit geekier? Are they, a little diving back a little bit more into the back catalogue perhaps? Like if someone goes for that and then you get a sense from them that it's just not hitting, they're just not there for that. Like what sort of flexibility would you have to pour something different?
Oh, there's plenty of flexibility when you're talking about wine matches and things by the glass. There's always plenty of bits and bobs open. The sommelier pairing, I think, is more a kind of suggestion of how open-minded are you about having a journey that is left up to the person that you're going on the journey with, And so I think a sommelier pairing is more saying, you've got somebody here that really, has done a lot of research and they know their stuff. Are you willing to come on the journey with me? And if so, we can go wherever you want. That's what I think is perhaps what they're trying to get at. And I certainly know at Quay it was some eclectic wines or wines that are a little bit more, perhaps you wouldn't see in the mainstream, but equally delicious and usually rarer and harder to source as well.
Shanteh, I had a really great wine experience the other night, and I think it really spoke to the skill of the person who was looking after me at a little restaurant in Melbourne called Pinotta. Philippa Sibley is the chef, and I do not know the name of the woman who was, seemed to be, was looking after us with wine. But not only did she look after us, she rescued me from a bad choice. It was coming to the end of the evening and I felt like a glass of red, but we'd ordered dessert, and the desserts, there was some ice creams with really fresh, bright flavours. And I think she was like, this person thinks she wants a red, but actually she doesn't. But she found me a chilled, sparkling, like a pet nat, I think, that had, but it was red, and it was so fresh and so like jaunty and bouncy and perfect. So I sort of got what I wanted, but it was a bit off to the side, and I felt in such safe hands with that experience.
That's so cool. And especially desserts too. I think, those classic pairings of it's either a botrytized or off-dry wine or it's a fortified. These days we have such savoury flavours in desserts as well, and they perhaps aren't as richly sweet, so we don't perhaps need to go down that route. There's plenty of pairings that would work with those, but I think some of the, like you said, the brighter, lighter, crunchier elements that kind of work with fruit or work with, acidic sorbets and things like that can be really a delight with that as well.
A restaurant that I've been to recently and just written a review of is Pure South. That's at South Bank in Melbourne, and they've just celebrated 20 years. The concept of Pure South is that they serve food from Tasmania. And, 20 years ago, Tasmania is such a favourite for produce for so many people now and such a favourite destination. But I think 20 years ago, it definitely wasn't. And the Philip Kennedy, one of the founders of Pure South, it really made a point of going down to Tassie, finding producers that had never hit the mainland and bringing them back, including in wine terms. We'll put this wine list in the show notes so that everybody can have a look at it. But what do you think of this long wine list that definitely supports Tassie producers, but also travels far and wide to bring quite a comprehensive drinks program?
Yeah, I love the way that they've kind of really paid homage to the different areas within Tassie. It's still lumped in its one geographical indication in Australia, but as we know, Tassie has got some amazing and very diverse areas. So it's really nice to see that they have equally paid love to some of the places up north, to the Freycinet coast, but all the way down, to the Huon Valley and the south areas too. So I think it's really well designed. And like you said, then you've got, the rest of the world in there as well. But, by the glass, you've got some big names for some of your sparklings where, these are big houses with bigger budgets to do these wonderful traditional methods sparkling wines. But then you've also got, some fairly new wineries like Small Wonder Chardonnay from the Tamar who, haven't been in operation that long, and they're doing really great things. So very well designed, lots of delicious things that I could easily drink. That's the problem when a wine list is done really well and you just sit there and you're like, I can't sit here for 30 minutes just looking at the list. I got to choose something, and that's the problem.
That's a good problem to have, though. I mean, when I went to Pure South, I just thought, why would I drink anything that wasn't Tasmanian here? I mean, do you think, who are they sort of looking after to have a more comprehensive list?
I think it depends on your mood, right? Like, it does make sense to go and drink something from Tassie there for sure. But I think that maybe for those people that perhaps visit the restaurant a little bit more frequently and, they love their Tasmanian wines, but they, have a hankering for some wonderful Chablis or, a Rioja. I think that happens too. And we've talked about that in the past too, especially during COVID, where you said, like, I want to journey to somewhere else too. Like, I can't go there, so take me there with wine. So you kind of want to have something for everybody, and not force them to say, this is what we're all about, and you have to do that every time you come here. You really want to give people the option to go with what they're really feeling like they need on that day, I think.
Yeah, that's interesting. I suppose a place I went to recently plays it a little bit differently, and that was an Italian restaurant on the Mornington Peninsula in Mount Eliza called Bau Bau. Sounds like it might be Chinese, but it's Italian. And, they're, just at the beginning of the Mornington Peninsula, which is obviously, we're very proud of it as a wine region in Victoria. Most of the peninsula restaurants, I would say, lean very heavily to peninsula wine. But this restaurant doesn't. It is very much about exploring the regions of Italy, which I guess fits with the food, but is a little bit... what is it? It's a little bit brave, I reckon, for the location. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think out of perhaps all the wine regions in the world, Italy and some of its regions needs more help with from a sommelier than almost anywhere else, just because of the language and the indigenous varieties that they have. They have a lot of different legalities that change on a daily basis too, so it's really hard to keep up. Well, I certainly found it that way. So I think it's wonderful that they've got so many wines perhaps that people haven't heard of, but I really think that comes down to making sure you've got the person to facilitate the experiencing of ordering wines and not making it too scary as well.
Definitely. Well, it's a very well-run restaurant with great staff on the floor who are definitely able to guide people through the list. So I suppose that's what's going to make it work, isn't it?
In terms of language, now this is something that I get asked all the time, so I'm interested to reverse it and put it back on you. We talk so often about communicating about wine with people and how we do that without, talking over their head or getting too scientific. I'll bring it back to Callan Boys' review. How do you feel about the way that people describe food in articles and also on the floor? Because it's one thing to say, this pork chop's delicious, but I am really always focusing on how people describe things so it paints a picture and makes something sound delicious. Is it important when you're doing that in a review to be able to describe something so you're not alienating some people, but also that you're getting across the description?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that can be the hardest to do, because realistically, most people are just reading it as a story. They're not going to, pick up the phone and book their dinner at the restaurant straight away. Of course, some people will, and that's great. It's certainly reviews that are positive drive customers to restaurants, and we love that. But you do have to make it engaging to read. That's always my first principle. But then, yes, you have to describe the food, but I don't think it necessarily serves the reader to get too technical about a dish, to describe every step or every ingredient, to feel that you need to be really comprehensive. I feel like it's more impressionistic, and sometimes it's about relating it to something else. I don't know, it doesn't have to always be literal. You're not describing it as though, I don't know, it's not a dietary guideline. It's not a recipe. It's not a catalogue. It's a story. So I think it's about being true to what the restaurant's trying to do, like respecting the craft of the chef, but also, putting it in the context of the dining experience and thinking about what the reader will find interesting. Maybe it would be interesting for them that, the beef is cooked for 14 hours. Maybe they more want to know, how it's, sticks their lips together. Like, is it just more about the experience than what's created that experience?
I think actually seeing that MasterChef just finished up with their latest season, I think that perhaps some of the judges on MasterChef have done a great job over the years, and the people that have changed in describing food in a way that because it's not very helpful just to hear that, well, you did a great job because it tastes great. And I feel that perhaps they've given a different vocabulary to a grander audience in being able to kind of dissect but also talk about food in a way where we're using different adjectives. And do you even watch MasterChef?
Yeah, I watched this season and I love Nat, the winner. I think she is definitely such a bright spark, and can't wait to see what happens. But speaking, back to the judges, I think you're right. I think they've definitely, over the years, there's been this accessibility about some of the fine dining processes that, are used in a show like MasterChef and in many professional kitchens. So they're sort of demystifying. I think, I don't know. I was actually just flicking around a whole bunch of food shows yesterday, and watched, 10 minutes of this and 10 minutes of that. And there is a lot of people putting things in their mouth and then going, And I think as a food writer, I'm constantly struggling with the fact that there is only one word for delicious in the English language. And I'm not going to use yummy in a restaurant review. But, what one of the things that Callan did in the review of Quay, he talked about a dessert and it described what was in it. And then his description was zip, zap, crunch, boom. And it's like, well, that's a way to do it. Like that just really goes to the kinds of things that are going through your mind and through, engaging your senses. So, I think there's always... it's actually such a puzzle, because you need to bring people into a restaurant review, but each review has to be different from any other review that you or anyone else has ever written.
And you only have so many words that you can do it in. So I don't envy you, because I feel like it is a very hard task.
Well, it is hard, but honestly, I feel like I am so lucky to do what I do. So, even when the struggle is real, the struggle is worth it.
Yeah, definitely some good things to come out of that.
So, Shanteh, maybe let's finish off with you can recommend something I should drink and I can recommend somewhere you should eat.
Yes.
What do you reckon I should pour for myself over the next little while?
I'm going to be topical because I was just down in Adelaide yesterday, but I'm going to tell you about Riesling Freak. If you haven't heard about Riesling Freak, it is the brainchild of John Hughes and a past MasterChef contestant in 2011, which you'll hate me for saying. But John Hughes is a Riesling freak. It's all he makes. He's dedicated to the art of Riesling in all its forms: dry, sweet, sparkling. And he is obsessive, and he makes, if not some of the best Riesling in this country. He numbers his Rieslings so that they are indicative of regional style and the taste as well. And so you've got a huge amount of breadth, but I would probably say if we were going to pick, go for the Riesling Freak number 10, which is from the Clare Valley. And it does have a little bit of fruit sweetness, but has a beautifully balanced, like all of his wines, dry, fruity. It's so pure that it makes you feel like you've had some kind of, naked swim under a waterfall kind of freshness vibe, It's just incredible. So Riesling Freak all the way.
Oh, I am all about that. That sounds so amazing. And I feel like that drink would go pretty well at the restaurant that I'm going to recommend you visit. I'm going to tell you to come to Melbourne and go to Anchovy. Anchovy is a restaurant that first launched 9 years ago in Richmond. It's owned by Jiayan Lee and T. Lee, and it's over the course of its life, it's explored Vietnamese food and other Southeast Asian flavours in a very Australian setting. I think you would love to sit up at the bar to eat dishes that I've enjoyed recently, such as a globe artichoke in curry butter. Absolutely delicious. And I think you would love it. Come during the day as well to the same little cluster of restaurants to have a banh mi at Carcom Banh Mi. You would absolutely love the house-made Laotian sausage, the house-made pate, the beautiful crispy pork. I can just see your face as you crunch into one of their banh mis.
It is the sandwich that I would choose for the rest of my life if I could only have one sandwich. So I would be super keen to check that out. And in terms of anything that says anchovy, I mean, I'm there. My husband doesn't eat anchovies, and I keep sneaking them in wherever possible. And he's finally starting to realise that he's going to just have to love them. But amazing recommendation. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you as well. And as always, Shanteh, so great to catch up.
It's such a pleasure. We could talk all day, as we always say, but thank you so much for the chat and all the great work you're doing, sussing out all the good joints for us.
Well, likewise, sussing out all the good drops for us. Meantime, everybody out there in listener land, keep those glasses dirty.
Cheers to you.
This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtylinenat deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.